Thank you for joining us. When considering patriotism and dedication, we should recognize all who serve their country in their respective fields. For example, in the late 1930s, more than 150,000 volunteers wanted to put their skills to use in defense of their country. This led to the formation of the United States Air Force Auxiliary Civil Air Patrol, just 1 week, in fact, before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Thousands of volunteers answered America's call to national service and sacrifice by accepting and performing critical wartime missions. They were assigned by the War Department under the jurisdiction of the Army Air Corps. Their contributions were highlighted by the sinking of 2 enemy submarines and many rescue services and other during World War II. Today, the Auxiliary of the United States Air Force continues with its primary mission areas, which include aerospace education, cadet programs, emergency services, and homeland security. Our guest today is Colonel Buddy Harris, a World War II veteran who will share his thoughts on these subjects following these messages.
You know you need CoQ10 and fish oil for your heart. You also know you need a multivitamin to maintain your health. But what you don't know is that an award-winning CoQ10, fish oil, and multivitamin are all made by Life Extension. Why settle for less than the power of science, the power of life, the power of Life Extension?
With us now is Colonel Buddy Harris. Sir, it's such a pleasure and honor to have you with us again. It's been a while since I've had the pleasure of having you on the program.
Yes, it has been, Richard.
And the need to promote a better understanding of your service and that of so many others in this, the greatest of democracies, is more important today, I'd say, than ever before.
Amen.
Please share with our audience how you first began serving in the U.S. Air Force Auxiliary.
That goes back more than 70 years ago. Wow. Well, I was 15 at the time of Pearl Harbor Day, and it was on December 7th, 1941. On January 4th, 1942, I reached the age of 15, and I immediately volunteered to serve in the Civil Air Patrol of the Army Air Force. And I was assigned to be a courier rider for them, delivering messages throughout the district area and the squadron areas. I did that for about 5 months, and I then got my license, my pilot's license, and when they heard that I had had a pilot's license, they were desperately in need of pilots for their submarine patrol missions. So they asked me if I wanted to join an aircrew, and of course I agreed immediately, and that's what I did for nearly 2 years. And it took us 2 years to get all of the Nazi submarines back to the North Sea in Europe where they belong. It was a disaster at that time. All of the ships coming out of our East Coast ports would be torpedoed as soon as they left the port. Within 10 miles of our shoreline, we would lose millions of tons of valuable armaments, valuable materials, various supplies. And that's what we were doing for a year and a half, just getting those submarines out of here. And we were dropping bombs on them, we were dropping mines on them, and we were diving on them. And that a submarine fears a plane diving on it more than it does even a destroyer, because they can get under a destroyer, but they can't get away from a plane diving on them because we see their shadow, and we could just drop depth charges and blow them right out of the water. So they crash dive as soon as they see us, and when they crash dive, of course, they can't shoot torpedoes at our ships.
Of course. How many submarines actually, do you recall, were sunk by these patrols?
We get absolute guaranteed, approved, and accepted sinkings of submarines, 2 of them that we absolutely sunk. We know that for a fact because we saw the wreckage and everything. There were 7 more that we caused mechanical breakdowns, and they had a surface and we captured them. And then unknown how many we hit shadows of that we never saw the remains of. So it's hard to give you a hard number, but 7 were damaged mechanically and 2 definitely were sunk.
What exciting but sad memories of a war that was imposed upon the United States and the entire world at that sad time in history?
Well, for me, it's a dreadful scene. I never get it out of my mind. I see it all too frequently, and that is once a ship is torpedoed, obviously it explodes, and merchant mariners, Marines, Navy personnel leap overboard to get off the ship, and they dive into flaming waters, and that's a scene I'll never forget in all my life. We tried to save as many of them as we could, but there's hardly much you can do in flaming seas, so regrettably they were great losses.
The U.S. Air Force Auxiliary Civil Air Patrol, from way back then and now, even to this day, thousands of young cadets becoming inspired by leaders such as yourself, and the stories that you can share, the experiences. How do you see the role of the U.S. Air Force Auxiliary today?
Well, our youth, interestingly enough, without a draft, are volunteering quite aggressively in our military, and that's very satisfying to former military people. As far as the Civil Air Patrol being a starting impetus for our youth to get active in the Air Force or other branches of the military, I think we serve a very valuable purpose in that regard, because the more youth that we get into our military, most of them stay and make it their career. And we need more career military people in this nation than we have had in the past. So it's good, very good.
How does it feel for you as an individual, being a veteran of World War II and actually a Jewish veteran?
I don't see any difference in being Jewish. I don't see any difference in being a veteran. I actively serve in an auxiliary of a military organization that I regard very, very highly, the United States Air Force. I think we have the best Air Force in the world. And all other things are insignificant and inconsequential with what my position is in serving my nation and paying my rent for my space on Earth.
So a question I feel I must ask you is, as a veteran of World War II, this horrific war in which so many have been persecuted beyond military battlefields, people in different countries, Jewish people, gypsies, others, millions of Jews, and you being a Jewish veteran, did World War II mean more to you for that reason, you're serving in that war?
Yes, I guess it did, because there was espoused determination to eliminate all Jews from Europe. Hitler was a demagogue in that regard, and I swore everything that I could do to destroy him and save the Jewish people, because they didn't deserve what they were getting.
Well, certainly sinking a Nazi submarine helps.
Yes, it does. It helped enormously, because we then were able to provide our allies and our troops with the supplies they so desperately needed, the ammunition, the munitions, and food, fuel, all of that kept them going. And it was that force that we were able to provide, saving millions and millions of tons of supplies for them, that lent a great, great deal to winning this war. Without those supplies and everything, I think they'd be shortchanged in trying to even win the war.
And thanks to the combined effort of the Allies and people such as yourself, Your niece is now married to an Israeli living in Israel. But the challenges facing democracies and maybe civilization at this time, the challenges are greater than ever. How do you see these challenges today?
Yes, the changes are enormous in that our wars are different, our fighting is different, our military responses are different. We're fighting today a group called the ISIS. Yesterday it was called the Sunnis. The day before that it was called the Sunnites. We just are not fighting armies like we used to fight. People who were in military uniform that we would recognize that they were military, they were enemy. Today, there are children with bombs strapped to themselves and they're suicide bombers. There are women carrying AK-47s. You just don't know who is our enemy when you're out there. And I feel dreadfully sorry for the kids because they have to make that instant determination, not to be an aggressor, but to be a defender. And that's a very, very difficult task to do when you're out in a strange country with strange people, dressed strangely, speaking a strange language, and you have to make a determination, is that an enemy or is that a friend? And I have nothing but the greatest admiration for our troops. We had done a magnificent job in that regard.
So much confusion, sir. Some people are saying that it really makes no difference what these terrorist groups call themselves, whether it is Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, or whatever, Al-Qaeda. They really are all one and the same, whether it is an individual, spontaneous, lone terrorist who decides to shoot people here in the United States or elsewhere, whether they get a directive from an organization abroad or not, it really is all one and the same. That is what people are saying. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they are all the same, except fighting them is very difficult because they're fighting each other as well while they're fighting us. So, assuming just for sake of discussion, if we would destroy the ISIS, and I think we can and I think we're going to, the next tribal group forms up and they take over and they become the aggressors and they become the enemy. And I can't see an immediate win-win out of that situation in that part of the country. The terrain is terrible to work and fight and live in, and they're used to it. They've lived in it for centuries. So if we attack them, they simply go into their caves, they hide, they laugh, because they know that if we can't find them, we're going to leave. And no sooner do we leave than they come out and start their war again. And they've been doing this for years now. It's not something that's just happening. That's their gameplay. And none of our military, I just yesterday saw a conversation and discussion with 9 generals, and none of them had a consensus as to what we do and have to do, short of sending in huge numbers of forces back into Iraq and back into Afghanistan and Syria and Iran and start an entire Mideast war that's equal to a world war. None of the generals could even agree to that. And yet they say that's probably the only way that we can win this situation. So it's a no-win situation, and we have to perhaps re-examine what we're doing globally, because I think it's a global problem.
Well, when the United States helped win World War II and brought peace to the former Axis countries, the allies of Nazi Germany, American values, ideology to some extent, and peace was brought to these countries, and they have flourished actually, Germany and others. Here we are in this new century, and the challenges you're saying are greater than ever. But let's examine some of the facts. Israel is a tiny little country, the one dependable, loyal ally of the United States of America in that troubled part of the world. The Arab Spring has become a nightmare, really, of greater chaos than ever. And Israel is subjected to constant attacks. It did give Gaza to the Palestinians and has expressed willingness for a 2-state solution. But terrorism just will not stop, and some people argue that if Israel gives back more, makes more concessions, it will not bring peace, just as Gaza to Arab control did not bring peace, and all the greenhouses were vandalized and trashed instead of being used to feed the region. It seems like, as you say, a very difficult situation to resolve. My question to you is, what would the United States do if its southern border was bombarded, or northern border subjected to thousands of missiles being fired from Mexico or Canada? How would America react to what Israel has had to put up with?
We have to retaliate, no question about it, and Israel has to do the same. But I think we all have to look to the world's perspective of what we are when we do it. And if we look like aggressors, or if Israel looks like an aggressor, they're going to lose the Allied support that they need desperately and that we should be giving to them desperately. And regrettably, they're going to have to take it on the chin for a while until we all retaliate as again, a cohesive Allied group. And I think we will. I think we'll support Israel all the way, because we know that all of the countries that are determined to destroy Israel are our enemies. They're not our friends.
It is incredible that the Arab countries among themselves fight and perpetrate atrocities, beheading each other, women and children. Incredible atrocities take place there. How can one possibly bring peace or intelligent solutions?
They've been doing this for centuries. There's no peace in any of those tribal communities. There's no desire for peace. You try to have democracy in Iraq. We had an election, but there's no government in Iraq. There's no government we can support. There's no government that the people have a regard for and will come out and defend their army that we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on training. No sooner did the first shot be fired than they ran. They have no desire to even save their own country. Well, if they don't want to save their country, how can a foreigner, we are foreigners to them, how can we save their country? It's a dilemma, a terrible dilemma, but it's been centuries with them. Their tribal conflicts have been going for years and years and years, and we don't see any window yet to peace amongst themselves.
I'd like us to continue with this, but we have to pause for these messages. We'll be right back. We're back with Colonel Harris. Sir, your family, some of it, are actually living in Israel, and this brings me to the question as to a little bit more about your background. You have all of these medals you've earned throughout a lifetime. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Not that much to tell. I gave of myself to serve my nation. I served them in any way they wanted me to serve. I did my very best. They seem to be very pleased with what I've done. We've accomplished peace in our country, and that gives me all of the sense of satisfaction that I need. Regrettably, having done that, I still have 2 sons and grandsons who are in the military, and my 2 grandsons are already on their 4th deployment to Iraq and Afghanistan and Germany. 4th deployments. I didn't expect my grandchildren to have to fight wars, but there they are, both of them.
That is difficult to deal with, I'm sure. I'm certain that you're very proud of them. Speaking of pride, I see you at veterans events. I see you at Memorial Day events. Do you feel that the public in general sufficiently recognizes and appreciates the liberties that most people take for granted?
Interesting you ask that question, Richard, because Saturday I took an honor flight to Washington, D.C. The honor group flies veterans to D.C. for a solid day, and I mean a solid day, from 3 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. They had us going. It was an inspiring experience for me, in that when we pulled into an airport, blinking lights, water cannons shooting water at us, all of their personnel out on the field now, this is out on the tarmacs, all lined up saluting us. When we got into the terminal, there were hundreds of people of all ages, from babies to grown-up and advanced adults, doing nothing but shaking our hands, kissing us, throwing flowers at us, welcoming us, big signs, we love you, we adore you, we thank you. It was inspiring. And when you feel that our Americans feel that way to the military, and I think more so now than they have for quite a while. Vietnam, I think, was a shutdown for that spirit, but I think the spirit has come back, and that was evidenced to me on Saturday. I still can't get over it. It's a highlight of my life.
Thinking of memorials and remembrance, why do you feel it is essential for neither Jew nor Gentile to be permitted to forget the lessons of the Holocaust in World War II, the atrocities perpetrated by Nazi Germany?
It's difficult, of course. We don't precipitate that. It's precipitated upon us. And it's difficult to countenance how people can be so cruel and so vicious and so inhuman. But there are people like that in the world. I guess there's been that since days of Adam and Eve, and I guess we'll always have to be confronted with it. It's very disturbing to think that all of that effort could be put to a peaceful life and live in harmony and in happiness, and that's what we fight for, and hopefully we achieve.
As I said, we are privileged to live in this greatest of democracies, the United States of America, and I'd like to ask you before we conclude, how do you see the relationship, the importance of the relationship between the United States and its ally Israel?
I think that it will never, ever weaken. It might be less than desired, but I don't think it'll ever weaken. The American people recognize that Israel is the tiniest nation in the world, geographically, physically, and yet they have achieved greatness beyond expectations of any nation. Their peace awards, their Nobel Prize awards, it runs in the thousands, let alone hundreds. And they've accomplished an enormous civilization for themselves. And I'm very proud to be a Jew because I look to my people and I'm very proud of what they're doing. I don't think America or England or Germany, even Germany and France, I don't think they will ever truly ever weaken their support and alliance with Israel.
Back to youth, the youth today that are so busy entertaining themselves with video games and smartphones and so forth. The need for STEM education to promote science, technology, engineering, and math is greater than ever. Again, I'd like to ask for your input as to the importance in instilling in today's youth, right here in America, the need to show their respect for all that is provided to them and serve. For example, Civil Air Patrol, U.S. Air Force Auxiliary provide aerospace education, cadet training, and homeland security and services. Share that importance with our audience, please.
Well, the Civil Air Patrol has had a tremendous record with their cadet program in taking people, youths, that have no idea as to where they want to get involved professionally or academically, and we've guided them, we've helped them, we've shown them what the various opportunities are. We have a glider program where we take them up and fly them for the very first time, and you can imagine the thrill that they experience, and their desire then is inspired to possibly get involved in aerodynamics. We teach them all of these things. We expose them to many universities that we take them to. We take them overseas on our international cadet exchange program. And these young men and women learn just what are the opportunities for them firsthand, seeing it. Reading it in a college catalog doesn't quite do it. But we, the Civil Air Patrol, have been very successful with our cadets. And now we're even carrying it further to where other organizations are having trouble with some adults and youth interactions. Civil Air Patrol is anticipating that possibly that could occur with the Civil Air Patrol, and we now, I guess you know about it, Richard, we're now on a very strong cadet protection program, where every single member, adult and youth, must take the learning courses in cadet protection, and we must also be examined by advanced officers like you and me to assure that every single member, card-carrying member of the Civil Air Patrol understands the importance of our relationship with our cadets, because they are the future of the United States.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying, and I want to thank you for your service, sir. Thank you for being with us again.
Good being with you, Richard, anytime.
This concludes our special program for today with Colonel Buddy Harris, dedicated to all the men and women in the military, armed services in general, law enforcement, all who protect the liberties we celebrate in the United States of America. Thank you for being with us.